Story 1. This happened in 2017. I was 24 and had just started working as a security guard for a private company that contracted out to various businesses in the Seattle area. The pay was decent, and I needed something flexible while I finished my degree. Most of the assignments were easy. Office buildings, shopping centers, nothing too demanding. About 3 months in, my supervisor called me on a Wednesday afternoon and said they had an overnight assignment at an old apartment complex in the Northgate area. The place was scheduled for demolition in 2 months, and they'd already relocated all the tenants. My job was simple. Make sure no one broke in to steal copper wiring or copper pipes, do a walkthrough of the building every 2 hours, and log anything unusual. The shift was 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. Thursday through Sunday, 4 nights total. The pay was time and a half because no one else wanted to take it. I showed up on Thursday at 9:45 p.m. The building was 6 stories, built sometime in the 1970s, brown brick exterior and those metal frame windows. There was a small lobby with a front desk where I'd be stationed. The property manager met me there, gave me the keys, and showed me which areas were off limits due to structural concerns. Basically, the entire 6th floor and parts of the basement. He said the power was still on in the lobby and main hallways, but most individual units had their breakers turned off. He left around 10:15 p.m., and I was alone. The building was completely silent except for the hum of the vending machines they'd left in the lobby. I set up my laptop, made some coffee from the machine, and settled in. At midnight, I did my first walkthrough. The hallways were dim, lit only by emergency exit signs every 50 feet or so. Most apartment doors were open, revealing empty rooms with torn carpet and holes in the walls where fixtures used to be. The air smelled like mildew and old cigarette smoke. I started on the 1st floor, checking each hallway, making sure all the exit doors were secure. Everything seemed fine. 2nd floor, same routine. I was walking down the east hallway when I heard a door close. Not slam, just a gentle click like someone had carefully shut it. I stopped and listened. The sound had come from somewhere ahead of me. I called out, "Security? Anyone here?" No response. I walked toward where I thought the sound came from. All the doors in this hallway were standing open except one, Unit 2E, about halfway down. The door was closed. I tried the handle. Locked. I knocked. "This is security. If anyone's in there, you need to come out. This is private property." Nothing. I radioed my supervisor, told him what happened. He said to note it in my log and keep an eye on it, but unless I saw actual evidence of someone inside, there wasn't much I could do. The units didn't have keys anymore. Maintenance had removed all the individual locks when they cleared the building. If that door was locked, it had to be from the inside. I continued my rounds, finished the 2nd floor, and did the 3rd and 4th. The 5th floor was fine. I didn't go to the 6th. That was the off-limits floor. Got back to the lobby around 1:15 a.m. Made another note in my log about Unit 2E. At 2 a.m., I did my 2nd walkthrough. When I got to the 2nd floor, Unit 2E was open. Wide open. I stood in the doorway and shone my flashlight inside. It was a 1-bedroom unit, empty. Kitchen to the left, living area straight ahead, bedroom door on the right wall. I stepped inside. The air was colder in here, noticeably colder than the hallway. I checked the bedroom, empty. Checked the bathroom, empty. Checked the closets, empty. No signs anyone had been there. No footprints in the dust, no disturbed areas. But that door had definitely been closed an hour ago, and now it was open. I left it open and continued my rounds. The rest of the building was quiet. Got back to the lobby around 3 a.m., made more coffee, and tried to focus on some reading for class. I kept thinking about that door. At 4 a.m., I did another walkthrough. 2nd floor, east hallway. Unit 2E was closed again. This time I was sure of it. I'd left it standing wide open, and now it was shut. I approached it slowly, put my hand on the door. It was ice cold. The metal doorknob felt like I'd grabbed something from a freezer. I opened it. The apartment was dark. I stepped inside with my flashlight. Everything looked the same as before. Empty, undisturbed. But then I heard something. A sound is coming from the bedroom. A dragging sound, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Slow, deliberate. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. I pointed my flashlight at the bedroom doorway. The door was cracked open about 6 inches. I could see darkness beyond it. The dragging sound continued. My hands were shaking. I called out, "I know you're in there. Come out now, or I'm calling the police. The dragging stopped. For about 5 seconds, there was complete silence. Then the bedroom door slowly swung open, all the way open. But there was no one there, just an empty room with bare walls and a carpet with stains on it. I backed out of the unit, my heart pounding. I went straight to the lobby and called my supervisor, told him everything. He sounded skeptical but said he'd send someone to check it out. A senior guard named Marcus arrived about 40 minutes later, around 5 a.m. We went up to Unit 2E together. The door was standing open again. Marcus went inside first, checked every corner with his flashlight. "There's nothing here," he said. "Old buildings make weird sounds, pipes, ventilation, settling, you get used to it." But I saw something he didn't see. While he was checking the bedroom, I was standing in the living area, and I happened to look down at the carpet. There, in the dust, was a line, a drag mark, fresh. Like something had been pulled from the bedroom doorway to the center of the room. I pointed it out to Marcus. He looked at it for a long moment, then said, "Could be from your boots," but I hadn't walked there. I'd stayed near the entrance the whole time. Marcus didn't say anything else about it. We went back to the lobby and he stayed with me until my shift ended at 6 a.m. Before he left, he told me that if I felt unsafe, I could request a different assignment. I told him I'd think about it. I came back Friday night. I was nervous but needed the money. The night started the same, quiet, uneventful. At midnight, I did my first round. I avoided the second floor entirely, went straight from first to third. At 2 a.m. I had to go to the second floor. It was part of my assignment and I couldn't skip it. Unit 2E was closed. I walked past it without stopping, checked the rest of the hallway, and got out of there. At 4 a.m. same thing. The door closed and I didn't investigate. Just noted it in my log and moved on. But at 5 a.m., about an hour before my shift ended, I heard something that made my blood freeze. It came through the building's intercom system, a crackle of static, then a voice. A woman's voice, distant and distorted, saying, "Help me, please, 2E." Then silence. The intercom system wasn't even supposed to work anymore. It had been disconnected when the building was cleared. I didn't go back to the second floor. I stayed in the lobby, doors locked, until 6 a.m. when the morning supervisor arrived. I told him I wasn't coming back, and I left. Later that week, I looked up the building's history online. Found an old news article from 2003. A woman named Sarah Mitchell, 31, had been found dead in her apartment in that building. Unit 2E. The article said it was suspected foul play, possible homicide, but no one was ever charged. The case went cold. I never went back to that building. They demolished it in December 2017. I hope whatever was in Unit 2E found peace after that. Story 2. This happened when I was 27 in the summer of 2019. I was working security at a private storage facility just outside of Austin, Texas. It was one of those big places with hundreds of units, climate-controlled buildings, outdoor units, even RV and boat storage. The facility was about 10 acres total, surrounded by a chain-link fence with barbed wire on top. I worked the night shift Wednesday through Saturday, 9 p.m. to 5 a.m. My job was to monitor the security cameras from the office at the front gate, do periodic drive-throughs of the property in a golf cart, and make sure all the gates are locked. We had about 30 cameras covering the main areas, though there were definitely blind spots, especially in the outdoor storage sections. The first few months were boring. Once in a while, someone would forget the gate code and call me to let them in at weird hours, but that was rare. Mostly I just watched Netflix and did my rounds every couple hours. One night in July, around 11:30 p.m., I was watching the camera feeds when I noticed something on camera 12. Camera 12 covered the back section of outdoor storage units, the big ones people rented for boats and RVs. There was a figure standing between two units, just standing there, not moving. I zoomed in as much as the camera would allow. It looked like a person in dark clothing, but the image was grainy and the lighting was poor back there. I grabbed my flashlight and drove the golf cart to that section. When I got there, no one was around. I checked between the units where I'd seen the figure, nothing. No signs anyone had been there. I drove around the area for another 10 minutes, checking all the gates and locks. Everything was secure. I went back to the office and reviewed the camera footage. I watched camera 12 from 11:25 to 11:35 p.m. At 11:28, the figure appeared. It just walked into frame from the left, stopped between the two units, and stood there. At 11:32, when I would have been driving toward that location, the figure turned and walked out of frame to the right. Its movements looked off somehow. Too smooth, too deliberate. I made a note in the log and kept watching the cameras. Nothing Nothing else happened that night. The next week, the same thing. Thursday night around 11:30 p.m., the figure appeared on camera 12 in the same spot. I immediately drove to the location. Again, no one was there. I even got out and checked the units nearby, all locked, no signs of tampering. This continued for 3 weeks. Always Thursday nights, always around 11:30 p.m., always the same spot on camera 12. The figure would appear, stand there for a few minutes, then walk out of frame. I started timing my drive-thrus to try to catch whoever it was in person, but I never saw anyone. I mentioned it to my supervisor, a guy named Dale. He reviewed the footage himself and agreed it was weird. He suggested maybe it was someone who rented one of those units and was accessing it regularly. But the timing was too precise, and the person never actually approached any of the units, just stood there. Dale decided to check the rental records for that section. Unit B47 and Unit B48, the two units where the figure appeared, were both rented. B47 was rented to a family who stored their camper there. B48 was rented to a man named Leonard Graves, who'd been renting it for about 8 years. Dale called Mr. Graves to ask if he'd been coming to the facility late at night. Mr. Graves sounded confused. He said he hadn't been to the facility in over a year. Whatever he had in storage, he didn't need it and was just paying the monthly fee out of habit. Dale asked if anyone else had access to his unit. Mr. Graves said no, he had the only key. That Friday night I was nervous. I knew 11:30 p.m. was coming, and the figure would probably appear again. At 11:25, I positioned myself in the golf cart near the back section, close enough to see the area around camera 12 but far enough away that I could observe without being obvious. At 11:28, I saw it with my own eyes. The figure didn't walk in like I'd seen on camera. It just appeared. 1 second, the space between units was empty. The next second, someone was standing there. Tall, wearing what looked like a dark jacket and pants. I couldn't see a face. I turned on the golf cart's headlights and drove toward it. The figure didn't move. As I got closer, maybe 30 feet away, I could see more details. It was a man, definitely a man, but something was wrong. His posture was too stiff, and his head was tilted at an unnatural angle. I stopped the cart about 20 feet away and called out, "Sir, this is private property. I need you to identify yourself." The figure slowly turned its head toward me. Even in the dim light, I could see his face. It was pale, almost gray, with dark, hollow eyes. He opened his mouth like he was going to speak, but no sound came out. Then he started walking toward me. Not a normal walk, more like gliding. His feet didn't seem to be moving right. I put the golf cart in reverse and backed up. He kept coming, slowly, deliberately. I backed up faster, turned the cart around, and drove back to the office as quickly as the cart would go. I locked myself in the office and watched camera 12. The figure was gone. I reviewed the footage from the last 5 minutes. The figure appeared at 11:28, stood there, then at 11:33, right around when I would have driven away. It simply vanished, didn't walk out of frame, just disappeared. I called Dale. It was after midnight, but I didn't care. I told him what I'd seen. He was silent for a moment, then said, "Stay in the office. Don't go back out there. I'll come in early tomorrow and we'll figure this out." I stayed in the office for the rest of the night, doors locked, watching the cameras. The figure didn't appear again. The next morning, Dale came in with another supervisor, and they went to Unit B48, Leonard Graves's unit. They had to cut the lock off since Mr. Graves was out of town. I watched from the golf cart as they opened the rolling door. Dale went pale. He immediately called the police. I asked what was wrong, and he told me to stay back. About 20 minutes later, cops arrived, then crime scene investigators. I found out later what they'd found. Inside Unit B48, there was a body, a man's body, badly decomposed. He'd been dead for a long time. The medical examiner estimated at least a year. He was wearing a dark jacket and pants. The body was hanging from a beam in the ceiling. They identified him through dental records. His name was Leonard Graves. The same Leonard Graves who'd been renting the unit. The man Dale had spoken to on the phone wasn't Leonard Graves. It was someone else, someone who'd been paying the rental fees on that unit to keep anyone from checking inside. The police investigated and eventually found out the real story. Leonard Graves had a business partner who owed him money. They'd gotten into an argument at the storage unit over a year ago. The partner killed him, made it look like suicide, and had been paying the unit's rental fees to keep the body hidden. The partner was arrested a few weeks later. But that didn't explain what I'd seen on the cameras. Leonard Graves had been dead for over a year. The figure I saw couldn't have been him. But the description matched. Tall, dark jacket, dark pants. I quit that job a month later. I couldn't shake the feeling that Leonard Graves had been trying to tell someone what happened to him. And I just happened to be the one watching the cameras. Story 3. This happened in 2020, right in the middle of the pandemic. I was 30 and working security at a closed shopping mall in upstate New York. The mall had shut down in 2019 when the last few stores pulled out, and the property owners were trying to figure out what to do with it. Either renovate and lease it again or tear it down and redevelop the land. In the meantime, they hired our security company to monitor the situation. My shift was Monday through Thursday, 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. The mall was huge, spanning 2 stories and occupying approximately 500,000 square feet. There were 4 anchor department stores, empty now, and about 100 smaller retail spaces in between. Food court in the center. The movie theater on the second floor, which had closed years before the mall, was now gone. The first thing you need to understand is how creepy an empty mall is at night. All those spaces designed to be full of people and noise, just silent and dark. The power was on in the main corridors for safety, but all the individual stores were dark. No music, no crowd noise, just the echo of my footsteps on the tile floors. I'd been working there about 3 weeks when I started noticing things. Small things at first. I'd do my rounds, walk past all the stores, and check all the exits. Sometimes when I'd come back through an area I'd already checked, I'd find things moved. A chair pulled out from a table in the food court. A trash can tipped over. A store gate that I knew I'd locked was standing open. I figured it was kids breaking in to explore. Happens all the time with abandoned buildings. I reported it to my supervisor and they increased patrols of the exterior doors. We checked all the locks, installed some additional cameras at the main entrances, but the weird things kept happening. One night in October, around midnight, I was doing my second round through the second floor. I was walking past what used to be a clothing store called Fashion Express when I heard music. Faint, distant, but definitely music. It sounded like it was coming from the old movie theater at the end of the corridor. I walked toward the sound. As I got closer to the theater entrance, the music got louder. It was instrumental, orchestral, the kind of music they play before a movie starts. The theater had these double doors with small windows in them. I looked through one of the windows. The lobby inside was dark, but I could see a faint glow coming from beyond the concession stand, where the actual theater entrances were. The music was coming from there. I tried the door. It was unlocked. It should have been locked. I'd checked it myself at the start of my shift. I opened the door and stepped into the lobby. The air was stale, smelled like old popcorn and mildew. The music was definitely coming from one of the theaters. I could see light flickering under the door of Theater 6, the largest auditorium. I approached it slowly, my hand on my flashlight, even though I wasn't sure I wanted to see what was inside. I pushed the door open. The theater was lit up. Not fully, but the aisle lights were on, and there was light coming from the projection booth. The screen was showing something, just colors and patterns, like a test pattern, and the music was playing through the sound system, loud now, filling the entire space. But here's the thing that made my skin crawl. There were people in the seats. At least I thought they were people. Dark shapes sitting in the theater, maybe 20 or 30 of them, scattered throughout the auditorium, all facing the screen, all completely motionless. I called out, "This is security. The theater is closed. You all need to leave now." None of them moved. Not a single one turned around or acknowledged me. I walked down the aisle, my flashlight pointed at the nearest figure. As I got closer, I could see it wasn't a person. It was a coat draped over the seat, arranged to look like someone was sitting there. I checked the next one. Same thing, just clothing arranged on the seat. I felt relieved for a second, then immediately terrified. Someone had done this on purpose. Someone had set this up. I walked toward the front of the theater, checking each person as I passed. All of them were just clothes, positioned carefully to look like an audience. When I got to the front, I turned and looked back at the auditorium. In the dim light, it really did look like a crowd watching a movie. Then the music stopped. Just cut off completely, mid-note. The screen went black. The aisle lights stayed on, but everything else was dark and silent. I stood there for a moment listening. Then I heard footsteps. Not from the auditorium, from above. From the projection booth. Slow, deliberate footsteps, walking across the floor of the booth. I looked up at the small window where the projectors used to shine through. I couldn't see anyone, but I could hear them moving around up there. I called out again. "Security, come down from there immediately." The footsteps stopped. For about 10 seconds, there was silence. Then the projector turned on again. But this time, instead of test patterns, it was showing something else. The screen lit up with an image. It was security camera footage. Footage of me, standing right where I was, looking up at the projection booth. The footage was in real time. As I moved, the image on the screen moved, but there were no cameras in this theater. The building security system didn't cover this area. I'd reviewed the camera map when I started the job. I backed away toward the exit, keeping my eyes on the screen. The image followed me, showing me from an angle above and behind like someone was filming from the projection booth. I reached the door and pushed through it, into the lobby. I heard the projection booth door open above and behind me. I didn't look back. I ran through the lobby out into the mall corridor and didn't stop until I reached the security office on the first floor. I locked myself inside and pulled up the camera feeds. I found the camera that covered the second floor corridor near the movie theater. I rewound it to 15 minutes earlier, when I'd walked toward the theater. The footage showed me walking down the corridor, stopping at the theater entrance, looking through the window, then going inside. But there was something else in the frame. Behind me, maybe 30 feet back, there was a figure. A person in dark clothing following me. I hadn't seen anyone when I was up there. I'd been alone. I watched as the figure followed me to the theater door, waited outside for a few moments, then walked past toward the far end of the corridor. I switched to the next camera, the one covering that end of the second floor. The figure walked to the emergency stairwell door and went through it. Those stairs led up to the roof access and down to the first floor. I checked the first floor cameras. No sign of the figure coming down, which meant they'd gone up to the roof. I radioed my supervisor and told him everything. He was skeptical about the theater setup and the projection booth, but the camera footage of someone following me was undeniable. He said to stay in the office and he'd send the police to check the building. Police arrived about 20 minutes later. 2 officers came to the security office first, got a description of the figure from the camera footage, then went to search the building. They started with the roof. The roof access door was locked from the inside, hadn't been opened. They checked the second floor, the movie theater, and the projection booth. They found the clothes arranged in the seats just like I'd described, but no sign of any person. They found something else though. In the projection booth there was a laptop, old, covered in dust but plugged in and running. The officers checked it. It had software on it for operating the theater's old projector and sound system remotely. Someone had set it up and programmed it to turn on at specific times. But that didn't explain the camera footage of me on the screen. The laptop didn't have any cameras connected to it, and there was no recording of me on its hard drive. The police couldn't explain it. They also found something in the laptop's files, a list of dates and times. Each date had a timestamp around midnight. I looked at the log I'd been keeping of strange incidents in the mall. Things moved, doors unlocked, weird sounds. Every single incident matched a date and time on that list. The police took the laptop as evidence. They said they'd investigate but didn't seem hopeful about finding who'd set it up. The building had been closed for over a year. Hundreds of people had worked there. Any of them could have had access at some point. My boss asked if I wanted to stay on. I said I'd think about it. I headed home around 5 a.m. I couldn't sleep, just replaying those clothes in the theater, the figure on camera, and my own image on screen. Then my supervisor called around 8 a.m. sounding shaken. He checked the camera footage from last night, hoping to see when the figure entered the building. He scrolled through the exterior cameras starting from 8 p.m., but it turned out the figure was already inside before the cameras began recording, which meant they'd either been in the mall all day, hiding, or they'd been there even longer, and they'd been following me, specifically me, every night I'd worked there, setting things up, watching. I quit that day and didn't even bother to grab my last paycheck, just told them to mail it. A week later, my supervisor called. They found a stash in the basement, sleeping bags, food wrappers, empty water bottles. Someone had been living in the mall for months, and there were photos of security guards taped to the wall. I was in those photos, walking through the mall, hanging out in the security office and chilling in my car before work. The police increased their investigation, but as far as I know, they never found out who it was. The property owners hired a company to do a complete sweep of the building, sealed it up better, and added more cameras. I don't know if they ever caught anyone, I still think about it sometimes. About whoever was living in that mall, watching the security guards, following us through the empty corridors at night. About what they wanted, what they were planning. I'm just glad I got out when I did. If you enjoyed these creepy security guard stories, hit subscribe for more. Smash that like button and turn on notifications. Got scary stories? Share them in the comments. We might feature you next.